Alright, so using a permanent marker, we're going to mark the apex of the frog's stay. The frog stay is defined by following the collateral grooves to its apex. Then we're going to go to the center of the bulbs and place a mark. This allows us to draw the sagittal line. The sagittal line divides the footprint in half. The next step is to identify the distal border of P3. We begin by going to the apex of the frog stay, then to the edge of the sole. On the sagittal line, divide that in half. That will identify the distal border of P3. If you look at the sole, or the tissue, the horn that makes up the sole, you can see the difference between the primary sole and that of the terminal sole. Okay, this is easily identifiable in most hooves. You can see it here. Once I get this done, you can see the difference between that terminal sole and the primary sole. Our next task is to identify the conformation of the true golden line. And we do this by going to the area of matrix, which is located just below the coronary band, feeling for the circumference with a conformation and comparing that to that of P3. Okay, so that's where we do it, right there underneath the coronary band, because there's very little distortion there. So what we can do is reference that to the conformation of P3 and draw where the golden line should be. Okay, we don't want to identify the distortion with our mark, but we want to identify where the golden line should actually be. And it should follow the conformation of its foundation, which is P3, or the coffin bone. The next step is to identify the insertion of the deep flexor tendon and the impar ligament, which identifies our axis of the foot. Palpating along the sagittal line, we're going to come to our first anomaly, which identifies the deep digital flexor tendon, which is directly distal to the extensor process. It's also known as Duckett's dot. Now we continue to palpate along the sagittal line until we get to the second anomaly. The second anomaly will identify the insertion of the impar ligament, which attaches our navicular bone to P3. This is the axis of the foot. This is where we will draw our transverse line. Lastly, our frog footprint is defined. We do this in order to create balance on the medial to lateral plane, the dorsal to palmar plane, and on yaw to the, or rotation, to the sagittal line. This is because the frog is responsible for delivery of stimulus to the caudal foot.